Live from Beit Shemesh and broadcasted around the world, you are listening to the Frum Entrepreneur Podcast with your host, Nachum Kligman. Interviews and advice from Jewish entrepreneurs from around the world. Listen, learn, be Matzliach.
Welcome to episode number 1 of the Frum Entrepreneur. I'm your host, Nachum Kligman, and I am excited to have a very special guest for this very first episode, Dov Gordon. Dov's a friend for many years now, and he's also a champion for entrepreneurs. Dov helps consultants, experts, and small professional service firms build a steady, consistent, predictable flow of ideal clients. For several years, Dov led a CEO peer advisory group that attracted the CEOs of many leading companies with between 10 million and 150 million in annual sales. At a number of these and other companies, Dov worked side by side with senior management to reformulate their company strategy and or to redesign and develop the management organization. In 2010, Dov turned his attention to helping small business entrepreneurs who love what they do but are having trouble getting enough customers. He helps these owners build simple marketing and selling systems that bring in all the customers they want. Welcome to the show, Dov. You there?
Welcome. Thank you. Yes, I'm here.
It's awesome for you to be here.
Congratulations on your new show.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's very exciting. And it's exciting to have someone like you. I mean, you are some ideal interviewer that I'd like to talk to because you are specifically, what you do every day is help entrepreneurs grow their customer base. So maybe that's something you could dig into a little bit and let our listeners know about.
Sure. What I've noticed is that most of the people I work with have some kind of expertise, although it could be product with expertise attached to it. But most people do not confidently talk about what they do in a way that gets the attention and interest of their ideal clients. And clients are drawn to confidence. When people can sense that you're confident about what it is you stand for, what you're talking about, and what you're trying to lead them to, then people are drawn to that. And one of the great underminers of confidence is when people cannot talk clearly about what they do. They don't have a simple head-turning message that gets their ideal clients interested. You come across that, you talk to lots of people.
Okay, so you're basically, how do you usually work with entrepreneurs? It's a consult, they'll call you, you meet with them in person?
Most of it is over the internet one way or another, because I live here in Israel, as do you, and most of my clients are anywhere from, right now we've got from Hawaii across to Australia.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so the great thing about working here is that the time zones work for you because in the morning I can be on a group call with one client in Hawaii, I'm here in Israel, and another client in Australia, and sometimes anyone in between. And the evening we deal with California across through Europe. So
wow,
that's that. But the key thing is that what I help people understand is it's not so much about how we work with them, it's about what we help them do differently. Because your goal, people don't realize this, your goal when you're trying to attract an ideal client is, let's say that you want to build a marketing system. That's what everybody wants, a marketing and selling system, so that you can do something, you do A, you do B, you do C, and then you know that it will result in D leads and E will become clients. But it's that A, B, C that people are trying to put into place that gets people running in so many different directions and working really hard, but the work isn't adding up to the clients that they want. Here's what turns the light on for a lot of people. If you're trying to reach your ideal client, have them interested in you, you have to realize that there's a series of questions that your ideal client is asking themselves. And your job in your marketing and sales is to help them answer yes to each question, to the right question in the right order. And the first question that your ideal client is asking themselves is, should I pay attention to your message? Is it interesting to me? And it doesn't matter what tactic you're using. I don't care if it's Twitter or if it's a sandwich board on the corner. People get too focused on the technology. People get too caught up in Facebook and the shiny objects about what things can do and what everybody else is doing and what the experts, the gurus say you should be doing this. Everybody's got to be doing that. What? You're not networking? Anyway, so people get so focused on the tactic and they forget that it's not about the tactic. It's about all of those tactics can work and they can all fail. So we have to understand when it works, why does it work? When it fails, why does it fail? And the answer is that when it works, it's because you're helping your potential client answer yes to the first question that they have in their mind is what you're talking about interesting?
Dov, you talk about it. I think there's a mistake that many entrepreneurs make in that when they're building their business, they tend to focus on what they want, what they think is good, and what they want to promote, and not specifically what their customers would want. So, what you're talking about here is right on, is key. It's not about you. It's not about what you want to do. It's about answering those questions, what your potential customer wants. And as you're saying, getting their attention first is a fantastic way to do it, and letting them hear that what it is that they want to do.
I'll differentiate also between attention and interest because there's a big difference and attention is not enough. And for example, if you go into a LinkedIn group, pretty much any LinkedIn group, you see lots of people trying to get attention, right?
Yeah.
Lots of people, a lot of loud noise, but I bet there are very few people who are going into LinkedIn groups and asking questions or answering questions. You see, there must be somebody out there teaching. If you want to get clients, go into a LinkedIn group and ask questions. And there must be someone else out there teaching. If you want to get clients, go into a LinkedIn group and answer questions. So you have all these people who are asking questions that never needed to be asked because they're just, to make hot air. And then because they're trying to gain attention. Right. And there are people who are who are answering those questions because the poor souls can't tell the difference between a question that was asked for a real reason or not. And the only people who are not noticing is their potential clients they're each trying to reach, because the potential client pokes their head in LinkedIn group and asks themselves, is this interesting? No, I'm out of here, right? But that's because people don't understand the difference between attention and interest. A lot of things will get your attention. A loud noise, a funny joke, a tragic story, all these things will get your attention. If someone sends you a YouTube video with two dogs eating with a fork and a knife, right? Did you get that one?
Oh, yeah, I saw that. It was fantastic.
Yeah, right. So it got your attention, but it didn't get your interest.
I didn't see that one. There really is a YouTube video like that?
Yeah, I'll send it to you. So, so might get your attention.
We'll put it in the show notes for everybody to enjoy.
Yeah. That will get your attention for the 3 or 4 minutes, but it's not going to get your interest. Interest changes your path. You're interested in something, it changes your path. So for example, in our job as business owners, as entrepreneurs, that we need to first get someone's attention and then their interest. Because if someone is heading north, they're not necessarily looking for you. If someone is heading north, they come across your AdWords ad, right? Your Facebook post, whatever it might be. And their brain asks the question, should I pay attention? Is it interesting? Okay, they might pay attention for a minute, but as soon as they realize it's not interesting, they go back to where they were going. Our goal is that the brain says, should I pay attention? Yes. Is it interesting? Oh, yes. So instead of going, they change their direction. Now they'll head east in your direction. That's the goal. The first of every marketing, because the first question anybody ever asks themselves is, should I pay attention? Is it interesting? Now, the good news is that there are only 2 things that anyone's ever interested in. And it goes to the point you were bringing up before. Right? And this is something that's so simple, but most people never really live this or apply it. The only 2 things that you're interested in, Nachum, that I'm interested in, and that our ideal clients are interested in, is a problem they have and don't want, and or a result they want and don't have. If you can talk to somebody about the problem they have and don't want, and or a result they want and don't have, you will get not just their attention, but their interest. Because that's all anyways they're interested in. And by a result, I mean a change. It could be they want to change something. It could be an experience they want to have.
So you help your clients get that message across in their marketing so that their potential customers understand that from their marketing piece. They understand specifically how you're going to help them with what they need.
Yes, and this is the kind of thing that's simple but not so easy to do because
it
goes against our wiring. It goes against our human wiring as we're thinking about things from our perspective. All right?
Fantastic. Okay, Dov, let's let our listeners hear about what the first 60 minutes of your business day looks like.
So after Shacharis and a little learning, I go to the local coffee shop, and I'm there for anywhere from 1 to 2.5 hours or so every single morning, just about. And during that time, I do some studying, some reading, and some writing, because writing is an important part of my business, and planning. And I get a cup of coffee and something to go with it. And I do that every single day, and it just keeps me out of the office and focused on that routine of thinking and planning and writing before I get drawn into and sucked into reaction. So I like to. People ask me, why do you hear it all the time?
I was going to say, you must have been doing this for years, because I remember years ago, going, I think it was Holy Bagel or something. You'd be there with
that's
your
where
coffee.
It is. Yep, still there. Don't take my seat. Just don't take my seat. So I go there to read and to write and to reflect, and then I go to the office to react and to respond. So it's very different. And what happens is if you're not making time to really read and reflect, and to, in my case, to write, because it's an important part of what I do, then you just don't have. You'll always just be reacting and responding, and that's no way to build anything.
Okay, very good. Now, what would you say is your biggest strength as an entrepreneur?
I think I'm pretty good at getting to what Ralph Waldo Emerson Jr. called simplicity on the far side of complexity. It is so easy to overcomplicate things, and I'm guilty. I'm just gotten pretty good at it, and I'm getting better all the time. But we really have this tendency to overcomplicate things, to make things much more complicated than they need to be. Pretty good at really simplifying things. Just like the concept of helping people understand that your first job as a marketer is to get the attention and interest of your ideal client, and there are only 2 ways to do it. By talking about a problem they have and don't want, and or a result they want and don't have. It really simplifies things for people. There's more to do after that, but just helps them realize, wow, if I'm not talking about any of those 2 things, then I'm just creating hot air.
So you basically get entrepreneurs to stay focused on really get rid of the noise and just focus on what is really important.
The critical 10% that makes you look brilliant 90% of the time.
Beautiful. And what would you say is your biggest weakness as an entrepreneur?
Not very good with numbers. I've had to really force myself over time to pay more attention to those things and to create routines as well where I go over the certain numbers and plan certain ways. But in my core expertise where I am good, this is a very common problem for service providers of all kind. I'm a coach, consultant, with whatever you want to put on it, is that for a long time I had a tendency to really, I'd say, care too much. Which means that when you care too much, you end up doing too much, and you end up carrying the client's burden. You end up carrying the client's part of this, and that doesn't work. There's a great quote from Abraham Lincoln who said, the worst thing you can do for those you love is that which they could and should do for themselves. And if you really do care about your clients, it does not mean you should do everything for them. And that type of tendency comes from a weakness. It comes from a neediness. It comes from a fear of losing out. And I've had to grow through that, and I think I've come a long way. Probably still more growth to do, but I'm just mentioning it because I know it's pretty common. And one of the greatest places that anybody could ever get to is where you do not feel that you need any individual client or deal. And that happens to be true. No matter what someone's situation is today, it's true. And if you start living that way today, then things will change very quickly.
Right. Yeah, I guess, when it's like sort of you don't want to give a crutch, you want to heal them. That sort of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're selling a service or a coach or a consultant or a service provider, there's a limit to what you can do for them. They will have to play a role. And if they're not going to do their part, by you trying to compensate for whatever they're missing, you're just going to make it worse in the long run for yourself and for them.
Okay, very good. What would you say is a habit you wish you had?
Well, whatever it would be is what comes to mind. It would fall under the category of more and more focus. So we're always trying to get more focused. And over the years, I've really learned that I probably spent, it says in I think it's Pirkei Avos, right? That Ben Esrim, Larutz, not Larutz. I forgot. Basically, your 20s are for running. I think that would definitely be true. I spent my 20s running. And in 30s is Ben Shloshim Lekoach. So I'd like to think that getting more and more focused and recognizing that it's not about running all the time, but you really have to stop and plan and think. And I think that's a habit that I still have. I've made a lot of progress in, but definitely looking to continue to improve.
So you're still in your 30s?
Yeah.
Wow.
Although
I hit my 40s.
On the latter half.
I'm
Just
in my early
barely.
40s.
All right.
Okay, why don't you share with us something that has you fired up, something that you're excited about, something, you wake up in the morning, you can't wait to do, something that has you very passionate about it.
We're really starting to, I've developed the approaches that I've been able to successfully really work with lots of clients over the last number of years. I always used to really think that it was dependent on me, like I had to do certain things. And over the last year, I've come to understand that it's not true. So as a consequence of that, I'm now working to grow my business beyond myself. Like I've already had someone working with me for the last almost 3 years, dealing with lots of operational things. And my wife does some work for the company, dealing with some admin things. And we've outsourced some things here and there. But what I've never outsourced before and I've just started to do, or not outsourced, but delegated, is some of the actual coaching and consulting. Oh, wow. And I'm training the woman who's worked for me over the last few years who really has the ability to coach others and to do sales. So we're really we're moving her into these areas of responsibility, which will really help create a lot of leverage for what we're doing. And she's very good. So fantastic. That's exciting for both of us.
No, for sure. If you could double your core business and help others, grow and, be able to bring on new clients, it's a win-win for everyone.
Yeah, I think all entrepreneurs fall into that trap to some degree in some area. It doesn't matter what you do, where you think that, I have to do this or that. Yeah, and you always have to be pushing that line where it can't be just you. You have to be able to delegate that, systematize it, and once you decide you're going to do it, then you start to notice ways to do it.
Right. I think there's a quote. Who was it by? Some famous basketball player. I forgot what he said. He said that he is smart enough to hire those that are smarter than him, or something like that. You have to know what you're good at. You have to know what your core, I guess, techniques are, and be able to, give out to other people, to delegate, as you said, to other people, other parts of your strength, or to realize that you can't do everything. So,
yep.
Okay. Now, as an entrepreneur, and I know, it's funny, everybody always hears the stories about successful entrepreneurs, and it's something that we actually want to highlight here, in our podcast. But I've never met an entrepreneur that just woke up, went into business, and was always successful, right? There has to have been times in an entrepreneur's life, probably many times. I know with me, it's been many times where there's been a down round, where it wasn't so exciting to get up in the day, and or something didn't work out the way you wanted it to, or even you had a business failure of sorts. You could talk a little bit about one of your worst entrepreneurial moments and how you got back up from that.
It's not so much a moment that comes to mind as a period, a number of years. There was a period of years where I was running around trying to find clients, to help people, convince them to hire me, to work with me, because I knew I could help them. But it's just like I did not understand how to convey that, how to get the message across. And it was a period of intense frustration. Maybe that's over the years, though, I've really worked at it, hacked at it step by step, analyzed it, tried to understand it. And that's what I'm helping other people with as well, because I've really had to pay the price. But it was a period of knowing you're sitting with somebody or you're talking to somebody. I know I can help this person, and you're trying to help them see it, and they just don't. You just can't get through. Mm-hmm. It's not them. And then, of course, you start to doubt yourself. Maybe
right.
Maybe I'm not so good. Maybe I can't. But no, there's a big difference. There's a distinction between confidence in your core skill, your core ability to contribute to somebody else, to someone else's business, to their life, and confidence in your ability to convey that to others, to sell yourself, to help others see that. And we need to separate that, because a lot of times people lose their core confidence simply because they're not yet good at conveying that to others.
Okay. So basically, you went through a down period where you didn't have that confidence in yourself, but once you were able to build yourself up, get that confidence, realize that you had what to give over to people and that you could help people, that helped you being able to convey it better to your clients and increase your client base.
Yeah, and there's always been ups and downs, like you said. So that's like the main period. It's over many years. I'd probably say the first 7-8 years I've went through that with the occasional. I had just enough success to stay in the game.
Right.
You're shown these signs. Just keep at it. Now looking back, there are so many lessons in everything, and there always are. But even since then, when things have turned a corner, still, like, you have disappointments, you have setbacks, and what I've learned to do and continue to learn to do is to how I interpret them. You can interpret that as you lose a client. Oh, it means this, that. No, it just means that it wasn't a good fit, or whatever it was, or you probably shouldn't have started working with him to begin with, and you start to see that you couldn't see before, and you learn from that. So in many ways, I think people need to understand that you're normal. A lot of people just think that they look around and, oh, that person is doing so well, and they think there must be something wrong with them. And it's really not true. The only thing that's wrong with you is that you think that there's something wrong with you. As soon as you realize that you're normal, you can, and that there are just a few insights that the other people have that you still have to gain or to learn, then you can get to work on the few things that will really move you forward.
Fantastic. All right, so we talked about, a down period, but, as Frum Jews, we answer to a higher authority, as they say. Obviously we have Siyata D'Shmaya, throughout our lives. It's funny, one time when I was starting one of my companies a few years ago, I had a discussion with Rabbi Winston and Rabbi Pinchas Winston, and I asked him, how do I know I'm doing what Hashem wants me to be doing? How do I know that this is the direction Hashem wants me to go in? And the answer to me was that when you see abnormal Siyata D'Shmaya, you're doing what Hashem wants you to be doing. And that's always stuck through with me, and that's really how I gauge in the projects and stuff I move forward with. And it's really, I've had a tremendous amount of Siyata D'Shmaya. I'm sure everyone has. Why don't you share with us one of your stories of Siyata D'Shmaya and where you just really saw Hashem winking at you, sort of thing?
Again, I'm going to say it's more like a series of, it's that there's always something. There's a little bit of a sign that says just keep going in that direction. Keep going. So, it could be anything. It could be finding, the right employee very quickly. It could be finding for myself the right person to help me, right coach, right consultant, the right bit of information to train, to help me learn what I needed to learn. It could be, showing up at this or that event and meeting somebody who turns out to be, just the right person at the right time. It's a series of things. And I guess you need to learn to just recognize it and go with the flow. Mm-hmm. I'm not instantly thinking of any kind of massive. Maybe that's also important. Is just be able to see in the day to day more so than any kind of big.
What you're saying is true.
Har Sinai.
When things are consistently going correct, we tend to think maybe it's us that's getting the credit and something that we did. And it is actually what you're saying. It's good that maybe to reflect in our day, in our business day, say, hey, what Siyata D'Shmaya that I have today? How, what was some divine providence that Hashem put in my way that made me more successful, or that made my, put me in touch with somebody, or, because you're right. If you keep waiting for those, I I guess, big Siyata D'Shmaya stories, you may fail to recognize the little ones, which are really not so little.
Mm-hmm. And there's a line somewhere where people, I do think that's a common misunderstanding when it comes to observant Jews that I've seen, where people think that, oh, if Hashem wants me to succeed, then, this or that will happen. Like some kind of bolt from heaven is supposed to come. And it's really not true. I've come to understand that type of thinking also held me back for a while, because you think, well, maybe I don't deserve it. And we all grow up with education about what that you do this and you'll get that and so on and so forth. I'm not the right person to really go through that. But going through it, for me, learning Mishlei with the Malbim was an eye-opener. Right. So, I could share a little more of that if you want, because it's definitely relevant to this.
Yeah. Why don't you jump into that?
So Mishlei, in a number of different places, Shlomo Melech talks about the charutz, the diligent person. And the Malbim brings a lot of Mishlei down to real day-to-day, very practical things. And for example, I'll just mention a couple of the places here. I'm not going to go so deep. Anyone could look at it. But in Mishlei Yud, or chapter 10, verse 4, it says here, Yad charutzim tashir. Rosh osek chafar miyav yad charutzim tashir. The person who's trying to deceive others is going to end up poor. The person who's diligent is going to become wealthy. Right? So the Malbim says, Hacharetz shehu hazaraz b'malachta. He's zaraz, he's zealous, or he's speedy. V'osek b'chol hayad u'b'kocho. He does everything he can. He works hard. Yodo ta'ashiroso. Yodo ta'ashiroso. His hand will make him wealthy. Well, no, that kind of, how do you fit that with, your money is, your income is determined, your parnas determined every year in Rosh Hashanah? Well, I'll leave that for some. I have an answer for that, but maybe that's beyond what we're doing here. So I think there definitely is an answer to that. But the point is that people have to see or know that you absolutely could control how much you're earning. And in Parak Yud Beis, it says, Yud Beis chapter 12, 24, again, Yad charutzim timshol, that the hands of the diligent will rule. Right? And again, it says, V'hu osa malachto b'li atzlos. He's doing his work without laziness, but with diligence and with, integrity, without, trying to fool anybody. And ve'eno otz laha'ashir pitom below yigia. He's not trying to get rich quick, says the Malbim, explaining Shlomo HaMelech. Okay? A lot of people need to read this because that, right? Like it says later on in Perek Chaf Aleph, hey, we'll jump over there. Perek Chaf Aleph 21, 5, it says, Machshavot charutz ach lemosar v'chol otz ach lemachsar. And this is, really important. We talked about planning earlier and time management. Really important. It says here in the Malbim at the bottom, Machshavos charutz ach lemosar, right? Hacharutz hu azaraz b'ma'asav. The person who's diligent is he's the one who's a zaraz. We're all taught how important it is to be a zaraz, right? Right. You have to be quick and do it right away. But anyway, mitnai hacharitzas hu hamachshava. You have to think. It's not enough to just, right? Diligence is not just action; it's also thought first. V'hisyatzus, consult with other people. Shelo yaseh davar b'nechitza. You shouldn't do things just kind of, without. I'm not sure the translation, but don't just jump into. Rak yachshav tchila. Think first. I'll call tzadei hafshar about all the possibilities. V'sheyaseh b'derech hayoser tov v'hayoser korev el hasachar. Do the more profitable thing. V'hagam shalidei ken yisma mea ba'aso. Even though he will end up moving more slowly at first, yasig mizeh mosar tamid. He'll end up gaining more. That's the idea of machshavutz achla mosar. It's for gain. The thinking is for gain. V'chol otz, the kind of the pressure, running, as he says in the next line, the kol otz shehu hadochek is a shah, the person who's pushed the clock, right? Oh, we got to keep moving, it's getting late. V'inyan losa tekev bli ivyon machshava hu tamid lemachsar. It's all lost, and I'm not going to read everything. But if anyone wants to see anything on all those psukim, there's a lot here.
Sounds like the Malbim's giving straight up business advice.
Absolutely, it's all based on Shlomo Melech. So I think that's
a pretty smart guy.
Yeah. Now that he has your endorsement, so there's always, I think that a lot of us grow up with some kind of mental religious baggage that's simply incorrect or not the full picture. And I'm certain that it holds us back. I know it held me back for many years because it did not help me understand that I can actually directly influence how much I earn. We have a lot more control than we realize. And I just decided that...
It goes down to the question of hishtadlus, how much hishtadlus you have to put in, what type of hishtadlus. But, bottom line is you could be diligent and you could get advice and you could do everything you're supposed to be doing and try to build your slowly, and you could still end up failing. For whatever reasons, Hashem doesn't want it to work. But I think what you're saying is that if you got to do, this is part of your hishtadlus. If you want to do hishtadlus, you want to be matzliach, you got to put in the right proper efforts. You can't just go and jump in and do things crazily and hope that they'll succeed.
Here's what I realized, okay? I realized two things. I don't care anybody after Shlomo Melech who came up with who says whatever they say. I'm not here to argue with anybody. But there's one thing I know is true, and this is in Torah Shebichsav, right? And the Malbim tells me, elaborates a little bit, enough for me, and if it's good enough for him, it's good enough for me. And the bottom line is that what I do will affect my results. Bottom line, what I do will affect my results. It doesn't mean that there aren't other forces at play. But what I realize is I can hardly do earthly accounting. Who am I to try to do heavenly accounting? How am I supposed to know where I really stand at any given moment? I think that's the Yetzer Hara. It's like for me to think that, because I did this or I did that thing wrong, or I fell short here or there, so therefore I'm going to be punished. Who do I know? That's the Yetzer Hara. I don't know what's going on.
That topic can be a whole nother podcast. Maybe we'll have you back in a few weeks to go into that further. But that's true. I mean, that is something that holds a lot of people back in business. If they had a failure or something, they may say, forget it. It must have been because of this avera I did, or that avera, or I didn't daven hard enough, or Hashem didn't forgive me, or this or that. I think, as from Jews, that does hold a lot of us back a lot of times from moving forward. It does definitely take away our confidence when we see things that don't work out the way that we think they should, or whatever.
We add meaning that we don't have evidence for. That's all. We just add meaning to an event that we don't have proof for. Mm-hmm. And it stops. And what happens is we end up not taking actions that are right in front of us. Right. And therefore we lose opportunities because we worry about what will be later, Right. Somewhere else here also, there's one of these. All right. Are you trying to slow me down, wrap me up?
No, I can keep going. It's just.
Okay. Because there's.
I appreciate your time that you're giving us today.
I don't know what time limit we have here, but there's another one here about...
That's the beauty of podcasting. There is no time limit. We can go on for 3 hours if you want.
Yeah. Dag, Parak Yud Beis, Pasik Chafei. Daga Belev Ish Yishchena is going to destroy him. Haven't seen this in a while. Like I studied this a number of years ago, but I brought this up for our conversation. It's the first Frum podcast I'm being interviewed on. So... But it also talk about worry, and see the Malbim over there as well. I'm not going to go through it now, but people go read it. Go learn through Mishlei with the Malbim for practical day-to-day advice. Okay, and on my website, which is dovgordon.net, there's an article called, I forgot what it's called, but if you search for Dov Gordon, Dovgordon,
I'll link to it in the show notes. So
and total focus. There's 3 things that anyone ever has to know, and it connects directly to what you're talking about. There's only 3 things you have to know at any given time. Number 1, you need to know your end result. Where do you want to end up? What kind of business do you want to have? What will it do for you? What kind of lifestyle do you want to have? What does that look like? Kind of get that end result clear. To a degree, it doesn't have to be perfectly clear. Nobody will ever know perfectly where exactly, but certain criteria. I want to be earning this amount. I want to be doing this kind of work. I want to have this, working not more than these number of hours, and so on and so forth. I don't want to be doing this kind of thing. I want to have this kind of team. Get those things clear. Most people are really unclear about that. And we're not going to go into that. It's another conversation as well. Right. The second thing you have to know is your very next step. You just have to know the very next step. The next step, which could be as small as, I don't know what to do, so I'm going to email this person and say, hey, I don't know what to do. You have any ideas, or can you talk to me, or can we think or make a phone call, or I should call. It's the very next step. What happens is we get stuck because we're worrying about, well, I know I could take that next small step, but what will I do if it's step 2, step 3, step 4? What will I do then? How will I handle that? Now, that is a case where that's you trying to do God's work. And that's a big mistake that we make. We're not doing what's right in front of us, which is our job, because we're worried about the outcomes, which is God's work. We can't control the outcomes. Right. So again, it just fits very well with Mishlei and the Malbim. And the third thing we need to know is, how do you want to be as a person? So you get that picture. First thing is, how do you get a picture of the person you want to be? How do you want to be? Now watch that person. If you want to be running a $1 billion corporation, right? And today you're kind of having trouble making the bills, right? So see that person. Because how does that person handle stress? How does that person handle difficult conversations? How does that person balance family and business? Watch that person in your mind. Just kind of.
We're going to interview billionaires to get those answers.
Okay, I'll listen.
Hopefully.
But I think that most of us can kind of imagine that, right? Or it doesn't have to. Like, where do you want to be? Just see their own picture where they want to be, right. And how do I need to be as a person to naturally fit in that picture, and then start being that way today. If a person is clear on those 3 things. Your ultimate destination, your very next small step, and how you want to be as a person in order to fit in that picture, you don't have to know anything else. Everything else is out of our control. That's the kind of thing that we leave, that's the heavenly accounting that we can't see, we can't control. Don't know anything about it. But what I do know is I can know the answers to those 3 things right now in the moment, and that's my responsibility.
Fantastic. This is gold, Dov. Thank you so much for sharing this with us. We're going to just do a couple quick questions where the answers will be 30 seconds or less. We're going to get a tzedakah plug from you, which is something we're going to do with all our interviewees that they get to plug a tzedakah organization. But first, so let's just 30 seconds or less. What is the best advice you've ever received?
Focus on mastery. Don't try to do everything and don't try to become good at everything. See where you're strong and build your business around your strengths, whatever it is that you do. And focus on mastering it, because mastery is something that few people ever really get to, and they pulled in too many different directions instead of mastering a few things that can make a big difference.
Okay, fantastic. Share one of your personal habits that contributes to your success.
I'd say it goes back to what we talked about earlier, the planning every day, where I spend some time planning. I used to think planning was a waste of time. I now understand that you can probably plan up to half your time and it's not a waste.
Well, I don't even think people know how to plan. Entrepreneurs.
Yeah,
I think they just wake up and they go, they answer their emails and they make phone calls and they do this, they do that. But I don't think, again, we could talk for hours, maybe set up another podcast just about planning, but you're saying that's an important part of your business day.
Yes, we can definitely have another long conversation about that, but I'll just throw out one bit here. Most people are looking to change something. And the problem is that if the change you want is not clearer than the path that you're on, you're going to stay on the path that you're on. And if the change that you want, you look at that picture, where do you ultimately want to end up? Is it a place where you're much more planned out, more structured, systematic? Then your very next step is like, okay, I need to take a step in that direction, because the person I need to be, going back to those 3 points, is somebody who is more planned out. And now where can I become more of a planner, right? How can I learn that? And just take that next step.
Is that something you help people do as part of your consulting?
It's something that we do, not for planning for its own sake, but insofar as building a consistent flow of ideal clients. So there's a part of that. It's subservient to the goal. Or the goal is the ideal clients or a consistent flow of clients. And the planning is well, okay, what's the process? What's the system that we're going to put into place? And what does that look like?
Okay. Now share a resource like Evernote or any other type of program or something that you use that can be beneficial to our listeners.
So I do like Evernote. I use it all the time. A few months back, I started using Rike for project management, WRIKE.com. And that I found to be a very good use. That's also the kind of thing that you have to either be handed a process or kind of figure it out along the way, or a combination of them, which is what worked for me. And that really helps you keep focused on your priorities and your next steps, and together with your team if you're working with a team.
Okay, we're going to check that out. Again, these links will be in the show notes, so you'll be able to, you don't have to stop the car and pull over. You'll be able to access them later. What book would you recommend to our listeners and why?
I'd recommend
Mishlei.
Definitely recommend Mishlei. And I'd recommend a book by Ryan Holiday called The Obstacle is the Way. Because once again, as I said earlier, so many people think that, there must be something wrong with me. Oh, those other people, they have this, they have that. This book really helps you see that all those other people who you think have something you don't have, no, they had the same frustrations and challenges that you have, but the way they viewed it, the way they thought about it, and therefore what they did about it was completely different. And The Obstacle is the Way is a really short and excellent book. I think it should be required reading in every high school.
That was great. Okay, we're going to end up now with our last part of the show, and that is a tzedakah or charity you support that you're pro. What is it? Why is it important to you? And then we'll wrap up.
Well, I'm sure there's somebody out there who really wants to have a shul building with the name dedicated to someone who is near and dear to them in Eretz Yisrael, in Ramat Beit Shemesh. And our shul is really trying to put up a building now. We finally got all the permits and so on, and now it's time to really buckle down. And the shul is Kilat Shiftei Yeshurun, which is mostly Anglos, Chutznikim from around the world. The Rav is Rabbi Yaakov Haber, who is pretty well known in many circles as well. He was in Muncie for many years in Australia. Anyway, so ksy.org.il or building.ksy.org.il, and people can go there and make their dedications to the Frum Entrepreneur podcast, in the name of the Frum Entrepreneur podcast.
Thank you, Dov. I'm also a huge fan of KSY, Rav Haber. Just a little plug for the shul. It's one of these absolutely fantastic minyanim. They just go and there's all different types of Jews davening together, kippah shrugas and black hats and black yarmulkes, and nobody is judged by the way they look. Everybody comes together as a community. And Rav Haber, I could go on for an hour just talking about Rav Haber and how fantastic he is. But the show's got to end, so
you should interview him.
I definitely will. It's definitely in the plan.
He has a book publishing business.
I definitely know about that as well. You're going to make me talk about my book, but that's being published through them. But we're going to wait on that. Anyway, Dov, thank you so much for taking your precious time and sharing with us and spending with us. And, I'll send this out as soon as it's ready. And thank you again for being part of the Frum Entrepreneur.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Take care, Dov. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Frum Entrepreneur Podcast with Nachum Kligman. We hope you learned something valuable and will share this with your friends. For show notes, archives of previous episodes, and more information to help you start and grow your business, please visit our website, www.frumentrepreneur.com. Listen, learn, be.